you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, just for our viewers, maybe you can say again, you've been on the show before, but how many years or how much time have you been here at the City of Salinas, and what are your responsibilities?
Yeah, sure. It's hard to believe, but I've been here over 2 years.
Wow.
The time has flown by really fast. In community development, we have several different areas. We deal with development proposals, so we have the building in the permit center. We have planning. We're also engaged in a lot of long-range and community-type planning efforts. We manage housing assets, and we have HUD funds, which are federal grants to help with housing and community development, and code enforcement. So those are our major activities.
You do quite a bit.
Yes, we're a very busy department.
So one of the things you just finished, I understand, in terms of the planning effort, was the economic development element,
yes,
right?
Yes.
So explain how that works, and maybe you could ease into how that relates to the LSL vibrancy plan.
Yeah, sure. So the economic development element is part of our general plan. The City Council adopted it in December, and we're really happy about that. It's actually not a required element, but for us, it's a required element because we think economic development is an important driver for the community. And so we really wanted to lead with the economic development element because, if we have a prosperous city, everyone benefits from that. And to help drive the general plan update, which we hope to kick off late fall. And ahead of that time, we're actually working on two specific community plans, one for Chinatown and one for the LSL. And these are really tied to the economic health of the city. These are two areas that have experienced lack of investment, a lot of challenges over the years. And so the city had the idea, including yourself, of really focusing and seeing how we can ensure that these areas improve, redevelop, and that the residents benefit in that prosperity.
Right. So in terms of the LSL Vibrancy Plan, maybe you can tell us when that was launched and where we think we are now with the plan, and then sort of leading into the next few steps in terms of that process.
Yeah. So the plan itself, it kind of had a slow launch. We actually did a lot of time setting up community groups, doing training, but we officially launched in late August. And we've been kind of working, having our steering committee meetings and working groups since then. We anticipate probably at the end of the year being complete. Maybe we'll have drafts in the fall to share with the community groups and make sure that we've gotten it right. We've done a lot of exploration work. We have an existing conditions report. We have 5 or 6 actually working groups that are meeting regularly to help shape policy in different areas. And we, on January 24th, had our design charrette to really get ideas about the major transportation corridors and what kind of crosswalks do people want, bus connections, and so forth. So we're kind of in the data gathering and community input phase right now, and it'll be a long kind of process because this is really a community written and driven plan. So our outreach and our work with the community won't end until the plan is adopted, and then we'll work on implementation after that.
Now this is really, I think, speaks well of Salinas and how they've engaged the community, because I understand there are 26 or is it 24 stakeholders, residents actually, that are leading the effort.
Yeah.
And kind of explain how that was decided and how they're equipped to handle this leadership.
Yeah, so we decided, I think we've been working with building healthy communities, and the city, of course, I think understands that we really want to empower residents. And so we've been, I think, coming together and realizing that we want to do more than just, have the typical steering committee, but we wanted people to actually become leaders in the process so that they can actually continue to advocate and help implement the plan after it's adopted. So that was kind of an initial goal, both with the city leadership and our community partners. We brought together a technical advisory group of various different stakeholders in the Alisal, and through that group we helped kind of recruit residents, because we knew we wanted it to be resident driven, and they actually filled out applications and were interviewed, and we had more than the number of slots, and we ended up selecting 26 individuals, and their task with more than just attending the meetings, but they're there to go back and forth with other residents that they know, and providing feedback from other stakeholders. And then they're very involved in doing outreach and letting people know about what's going on and encouraging them to come to our larger gatherings and events.
So you have some staff that are assigned to help lead from a staff point of view, and then you also have a consultant or several consultants that are helping with some of the more technical aspects of the development of the plan.
Yeah, so we have a primary consultant, which is Ramey and Associates, and then they have sub-consultants that are helping on various different areas. They have PlaceWorks, who's involved, Kittleson, who's involved, and these are advisors that have expertise in terms of transportation. They have another individual who's working with businesses. They have PlaceWork, who's expert in design and open space. So it's a nice team that has come together. And then we're also working with LGC, who is helping with some of the charrettes for the Caltrans grant, because we actually have a grant that will help us look at the corridors in a lot more detail within the plan. So the Alisal Vibrancy Plan is actually also benefiting from a Caltrans grant.
Oh, some state money is involved.
Yeah.
So most of in terms of logistics, where these meetings are occurring, are in the neighborhoods, in the Alisal or East Salinas area, right?
Yep, and we've benefited from really great facilities that the city has, the firehouse, the bread box, Cesar Chavez Library. We've really taken advantage of those locations, and the schools have been really great about sharing their spaces as well, particularly the Martin Luther King Academy. We've been able to use their new Family Resource Center and hold a lot of meetings there as well.
So what are you hearing? It's pretty early in the process. You're still gathering data, and you're having some charrettes and some, particular focus on some items. But what kind of feedback are you getting? Are you getting a sense of what the community wants to see in this plan? What kind of vibrancy they want to see in the Alisal?
Yeah, I think we're starting to get a sense. But one thing that has come up is a lot of these concepts are new to residents here. They haven't really seen them. So we've talked even among our groups about doing some kind of education and site visits, because, for example, they haven't seen a lot of quality crosswalks, really good working crosswalks. They know that they need them, or, some different types of parks that may have, different turf that's more sustainable. So these are things they want to see if it works with the community. So we're hearing a lot about that. We're hearing also, I think everyone in the LSL appreciates the cultural richness of the community, and I think we need to learn how to celebrate that and really highlight that. So that's something that I think has come out very similar to Chinatown too. So those are two areas that we can kind of learn from each other about how to celebrate that rich culture. Of course, activities for youth is really a big thing. Activities for the family, open space, housing, these are all issues that are really big. And I think what's interesting is a lot of people have identified safety and violence as a need and to address in the LSL. But I think it's interesting because they're looking at ways to address that through programming for youth and for also design, improving design, lighting, and things of that nature. So I think that has also come through. And what's really impressed me is that the team of the city team has really come together to support the planning effort. And we had a great meeting today with different departments coming in and sharing ideas and listening to what the community had to say. And I think that's going to also be really rich because I think there's a lot of city employees who are very passionate about East Salinas, some who live in East Salinas, and they really want to help it become the community we know it can become.
So it's actually a multi-departmental approach. It's not just, and it's driven by the community. So that's a little different than our traditional planning exercise we have normally done. Wow. So in terms of timing, you're now in the early stages. How long will it take to, you mentioned the community will decide when they're completed their plan. But do you have an estimate? Do you have a general idea when that might be?
Yeah, I think so. We anticipate the working groups going through till July or August. So we should have early drafts in the fall that we'll probably be doing a lot of community vetting and some larger community meetings. And then, depending on how much input we have through that process, we could be to City Council sometime in the late fall, maybe before the end of the year. And we aren't trying to put an end date because we want to make sure that we're building in the community processes. And sometimes when community is great, it needs to be a community-driven process, but sometimes it's a little bit messy and not as controllable. So, if we got something wrong, we want to build enough time to, correct it and make sure that, the community feels we captured what it is that they really wanted to see for the neighborhood.
Yeah. So one of the other sort of unifying aspects of the LSL plan is its relationship to other planning efforts. You mentioned Chinatown, how there's some similarities in terms of capturing that cultural and ethnic history and richness that each of those areas represents. And then there's a master plan for the parks, recreation, library system. So how does that all work? Those seem to be major engagements with the community, major planning efforts that are really interactive. Sounds like led by the community.
Yeah, so it's been awesome. We created this single kind of organizing effort called Visión Salinas, and all of these not smaller, but major planning efforts are encapsulated under Visión Salinas. We have a website. We have kind of a cohesive look and icons for each of the efforts, and we meet every other week to coordinate our outreach efforts to make sure that we're not, having the same event on the same day.
Right.
A good example of that is last night we had our big design charrette in the Alisal, and Carrie Ann and Kristen, heading the Parks Master Plan effort, were there, and they brought their questions. They kind of created a little parks pop-up in the room about what people's priorities were related to parks and recreation. And so people, as they were coming into the charrette, actually, voted on what was priorities. So they had a kind of a dot activity, and they were able to, provide the feedback. And then, of course, we're sharing ideas, feedback with each other. The other thing that we're doing is we're working on a set of guiding principles that would come through all of our future planning efforts. Those are the city values related to planning. And most of those values we're plucking up out of, the housing element, the economic development element, the strategic plan, and we'll actually be vetting them within the community in the coming months. And then those will be incorporated into all of our plans. So that's one way that we want to keep the values consistent. And we feel that we've heard enough from the community that the values are consistent. We've heard, equity, inclusiveness is a real important equity to the community. So, we envision that will be part of the guiding principles.
So Megan, in terms of time frames, the next few steps, so what major activities or tasks do you will the plan accomplish, or planning process address in the next few months?
Yeah, so I think we're really starting to drill into policy with the working group. So we're starting to look into issues related to what recommended policies and a little bit about land use. We're going to take the information we get on the design charrette to really look at the corridors and map out what we think people want for those infrastructure investments. So those are kind of key tasks. We also are looking to do some educational work. My housing group talked about having basically visit different types of housing to really educate themselves about what housing, because a lot of people have said they're not familiar with these things. So we might do something similar with the transportation committee. We're also going to do some walking audits, so people in the Alisal might see, different folks kind of walking the streets, making notes. So those are kind of the main activities. We're going to start drafting ideas probably, I would say, in April. And then, as I mentioned before, we anticipate going out with some kind of early drafts to the community in the summertime to get kind of broader feedback and make sure we're on the right track.
Right.
So
how can citizens become involved if they are not involved now in the Alisal effort either? And is it just limited to the people in Alisal, or, if you're a resident of Salinas, can you want to support some way? Is there a way for them to participate?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have the Vision Salinas website, and they can connect to the Alisal website and see what's going on. We'll have our calendar. We have our calendar on there. They can come. We encourage people to come to those larger events to share feedback. We have a little bit of space on the working groups if someone is really passionate about a subject such as arts and culture or recreation. We do have some spaces on the working group. And then there's always an opportunity to connect with staff also through the website with ideas or thoughts. And then we really want people who want to participate in contributing to the Alisal in any way, whether, you know, we have, you know, various different stakeholders, whether you shop in Alisal or, you know, and learn about the Alisal. We had, it was really exciting. We had a block party in Chinatown, and a lot of people who'd never been to Chinatown came and saw and got excited and wanted to participate and help. And we kind of anticipate doing some of that work a little bit later. I also know that we're talking about, for example, about having a business expo in the Alisal. So we'll need, you know, people who want to come and present and help educate folks about starting a business. Or so there's a lot of different ways to get involved, because I think our working groups, in addition to providing some guidance with policy, they're actually chomping at the bits to do some little things that they can do, like whether it's a cleanup effort or, you know, like I said, the business expo. So you contact us, we'll find you a way to get involved. We have lots of work to do.
One of the features of Chinatown was housing, and you and your team were successful in helping launch the MedPen project, which is 90 units. It's a very significant project. Do you see a similar sort of catalyst housing project that might be, you know, sort of a signature, or you know, a project that would help launch other projects, particularly in housing?
Yeah, I think there's a huge opportunity with the marketplace, but we also have, as you know, we have the properties along Division Street that the city owns, and that we're looking at those as well as an opportunity site. And we're reaching out to some of our housing partners and other partners to see if there's an interest in doing something. So yeah, we're hoping to do some visioning and planning around those two pieces, because those are our best opportunity sites. There was some work done on both, so it's a matter of looking at what was already done, seeing what needs to be changed, and then how we want to adapt it to the current conditions. But there's also small things that we can do around housing, and one thing that has come up is the possibility of helping people do second units to some of the single-family houses in the neighborhood.
Accessory dwelling units, is that what they call it?
Yeah, accessory dwelling units. So one of the things that I've come to realize is we really need to figure out how we can help people get through the rules and regulations, and also get financing to build those units, because that could help relieve folks from overcrowded conditions. So we're also looking at that as a possible solution.
So it's legally acceptable, accessory, you know, dwelling units. It's a matter of making sure, you know, the rules are obviously followed. But so what you're saying is the city and the department is going to be emphasizing that in the coming months and years as another way to address the housing without having to create a huge housing project. There's ability and capacity in some of the single-family areas.
Exactly, and a lot of cities are actually using the, you know, as a strategy to meet their housing needs, because like San Francisco or Los Angeles, we are very dense and crowded in the Alisal, and there's just not available space. So we know that it's not like we can build a bunch of multifamily units and solve the problem. We're going to have to look, you know, in some kind of creative, smaller ways to address the problem. And one thing we did hear is people do like kind of having families living together, and they do want to have more of a kind of a traditional housing structure, and that kind of helps do that, but allows, you know, in safe places their family to cohabitate on the same site.
Sort of that extended family, you know, tradition.
Yeah, so you might have the, you know, daughter and the brother
Right.
and the grandparents all living in one location, and this might be a way to make it so that it's
Right.
not overcrowded, it's safe for those folks to live together.
Is there anything in the state recently passed legislation that might help with accessory dwelling units or other housing?
Yeah, so the state did recently, about a year ago, pass legislation regarding accessory dwelling units, and the city passed regulations to make it much easier to, reduce some of the zoning requirements. But I don't think we've done as good of a job about really advertising it. And
Right.
also, I think there's a financing aspect of it, and we're actually looking at a model that they have in Los Angeles where they're using some of these small community development financing institutions to help fund that. So that's one thing we're looking at. And there's also new state legislation regarding housing that will be helpful. There'll be a little bit, we're not sure how much the city will get annually, but there was a recent bill passed that will result in about $277 million throughout the state annually for housing. And so we're going to probably, part of the first installment that the city hopefully will get, we're going to start looking at our housing policy to see how we can help facilitate housing development. And then there's a bond measure that's going to be coming on the ballot in November of 2018, and hopefully folks will vote for it. That would result in about $4 billion of monies for affordable housing projects. $1 billion would be set aside for veterans.
Wow.
So we're really hoping that that passes, and that could be another way that we could build affordable housing in the Alisal.
Right. The timing might be good when it passes because you'll be sort of wrapping up your
Yep.
plan and might be able to incorporate some of those opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Right. So, in closing, what kinds of things should the public be looking for in the Alisal plan in the next few months? You'll be getting, I'm sure, word out about all these different events and charrettes and sessions that you'll have with the community.
Yeah, and I want the public to know that it's not too late to get involved. If you're
Right.
just hearing about this for the first time,
Right.
that there's plenty of opportunities to get involved. We'll have a lot of various ways that you can get involved. And you'll start seeing this very, I think, innovative, but also we're not going to shy away from challenges. It's going to be a very visionary
Right.
plan, because we really think if we all collectively work together, we can
Right.
transform the neighborhood. So that's what we want people to, provide the feedback, help us craft a plan that really is tailored to the Alisal, but also something that you can get behind and implement. And even if you come late to the party and the plan is adopted, there'll always be opportunities for you to participate in the implementation, and that's going to be many, many years of work
Right.
together. So.
Excellent, excellent. Well, appreciate you being on the show and sharing the update on the Alisal Vibrancy Plan. Sounds very exciting, and
Yeah.
so far, the community seems very receptive, and there might be even a pent-up demand to try to make sure that their future is taken care of, and they're in a place where they can lead that effort.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Megan.
Yeah.